Ladies and gentlemen, friends, brothers and sisters, a time is coming, and indeed it is already here, when the question will no longer be if you will take the mark, but when and how. And most dangerously of all, why? This is not a mark etched in ink or metal. No, this is something far more subtle, far more seductive. It is a mark not just on the hand or the forehead, but on the conscience, on the soul. In today's world, the idea of taking of the mark is often portrayed as a sudden, dramatic event, an outright decision to betray your values in exchange for survival or power. But in reality, it rarely happens that way. Taking the mark is usually a slow process, almost unnoticeable at first. It begins in the mind when a person chooses ease over truth, comfort over principle. Over time, the line between right and wrong becomes blurred. What starts as a small compromise soon becomes a lifestyle. The mark is not just imposed, it is accepted willingly, little by little. The path to taking the mark is paved with seemingly innocent decisions. One lie told to avoid conflict, one truth silenced to protect an image, one shortcut taken to get ahead. These are not crimes in the eyes of the world, but they chip away at the foundation of integrity. Each time we act against our conscience, it becomes easier to do it again. Eventually, our moral compass grows quiet, numbed by repeated compromise. The danger lies in believing that these small steps are harmless. In fact, they are the beginning of total surrender. People imagine the mark as a symbol of external control, something forced upon them by a corrupt system or government. But more often, the real power behind the mark lies in internal weakness. It's not just about being told what to do. It's about being too tired, too afraid, or too distracted to resist. When people stop thinking for themselves and begin to follow the crowd without question, they are already preparing themselves to accept the mark. True freedom is lost not when we're forced to obey, but when we stop choosing to resist. The culture around us doesn't always demand obedience with threats. It often lures us with promises. Acceptance, success, wealth, and convenience are dangled before us, and we're told we can have them if we just adjust our values a little. Just be quiet, it says. Just agree. Don't make a scene. And for many, the price seems worth it. The desire to belong, to not be excluded, becomes stronger than the desire to be honest or faithful. That's how the mark wins, not through fear, but through persuasion. It speaks softly until resistance becomes a whisper. Some believe they will recognize the moment when the choice comes. They think they'll stand firm when the test arrives. But what they forget is that the test does not come all at once. It comes slowly, dressed in everyday decisions. If you're not training your heart to be strong in the small things, you won't have the strength for the big ones. Taking the mark doesn't start with one major betrayal. It starts with one moment of silence, one glance in the other direction, one refusal to speak up. Resistance must be practiced daily. This is why discernment is essential. Without a sharp awareness of what is true and what is false, people are easily led into compromise without realizing it. Culture shifts, values change, and suddenly what was once considered wrong is now celebrated. If you are not anchored in an unchanging standard, like truth, faith, or principle, you will drift. And in your drifting, you may take the mark without even knowing it. Discernment helps you recognize when a seemingly good offer carries a hidden cost. Your integrity, your soul, your freedom to choose right over wrong. The mark is not a sudden brand, but a gradual transformation. It happens when a person who once stood tall starts to bend, then crouch, then finally kneel. The world rewards those who kneel with comfort and applause. But at what cost? The more you compromise, the less of yourself remains. You start to forget what it felt like to live with courage. You start to believe the lie that resistance is foolish, that truth is outdated, and that principles are inconvenient. And in that belief, the mark is accepted, not with resistance, but with open arms. Even religious people are not immune. In fact, those with faith may be at greater risk, because they often assume their belief will automatically protect them. But faith without action, without practice, is weak. If your values are not tested, sharpened, and lived out, they will wither. The mark comes for the faithful too, not with threats, but with distractions, busyness, popularity, social pressure. Many will claim to follow the truth, but when that truth costs them something, they will walk away. The mark is waiting at the end of convenience's path. In conclusion, taking the mark is not a dramatic, singular choice. It is the result of many small decisions made over time to compromise truth for comfort. The real danger lies not in being forced to obey, but in being persuaded to surrender. If we are not constantly aware, constantly choosing integrity, we may find ourselves marked before we even realize it. The only defense is daily resistance, daily courage, and a refusal to let the world slowly take what matters most. Because in the end, the mark is not something done to us, it is something we allow. Human beings are worshipers by nature. Whether they realize it or not, everyone gives their heart, loyalty, and energy to something. For some, it's God. For others, it's wealth, fame, power, comfort, or even self. What you worship becomes your center, the thing you protect, defend, and prioritize. It shapes your decisions and molds your identity. This is why what you worship determines what you accept. If you worship ease and success, you will accept lives that protect your lifestyle. In the end, the mark is not just about allegiance. It is about who truly sits on the throne of your heart. When people worship what the world values, approval, influence, material gain, they become more willing to trade their convictions for those things. A person who fears rejection more than dishonor will accept whatever mark culture offers to feel included. When self-image is God, truth becomes negotiable. If the opinion of others defines you, then you will compromise just to avoid judgment. But if your loyalty is rooted in truth, you will stand even when it costs you everything. This is why worship is not just religious. It's a matter of allegiance and endurance. Worship creates a filter through which all decisions are made. If money is your God, then unethical choices seem reasonable as long as they increase profit. If pleasure is your God, then moral boundaries become optional if they interfere with your satisfaction. If safety is your God, then truth can be silenced for the sake of survival. People don't simply fall into compromise. They are shaped into it by the thing they revere most. The mark is a reflection of what people already value. They do not betray truth in a moment. They drift away from it over time. One of the most dangerous deceptions is believing that you can worship both truth and comfort at the same time. But in the defining moments of life, those two often stand in opposition. The more comfortable a lie makes you, the more threatening the truth feels. Eventually, when forced to choose, you will follow the one you've served the longest. That is why the mark is not just something you receive, but something you're prepared for by your patterns of worship. You follow the voice you trust, and you trust the voice you listen to most. The world constantly preaches what is acceptable and unacceptable, redefining morality to fit its own desires. If you worship the world's values, you will accept its shifting standards. What once seemed wrong will start to feel normal. What once stirred conviction will be dismissed as outdated. When society becomes your God, its opinions become your doctrine. That is how many take the mark without resistance. They've already been trained to accept whatever culture demands. They are not forced into submission, they are convinced into agreement. Worship forms belief, and belief drives behavior. That is the power of allegiance. This is why worship cannot be casual or passive. You are either being shaped by truth or by trends. There is no neutral ground. If your faith is shallow and your convictions are borrowed, they will crumble when tested. But if you worship what is eternal, your foundation will hold, even under pressure. The mark may be offered, but it will not be accepted by those whose hearts are firmly set on something higher. The key to resistance is not just saying a no to the world, it is saying yes unto something greater every single day. In times of crisis, what you worship becomes crystal clear. When standing up for truth risks your job, your reputation, or your freedom, only true worship will carry you through. Many will fall away not because they wanted to, but because they never realized their worship was misplaced. They never rooted themselves deeply enough to withstand the storm. And when the storm came, they followed the path of least resistance. They took the mark not with pride, but with exhaustion and fear. Worship must be cultivated in peace so it can be lived out in conflict. The battle over the mark is ultimately a battle for your soul's allegiance. It is not about symbols or systems. It is about surrender. Who owns your loyalty? What are you willing to sacrifice to keep your comfort? The answers to those questions will reveal whether the mark is even necessary, because many will mark themselves long before it's ever offered. They will bear the image of the God they serve, whether it's truth or self. This is why worship is the true battlefield. What you lift up in your life will eventually determine what you bow to. In conclusion, the mark is not forced upon a neutral heart. It is welcomed by a heart already shaped by what it worships. You will take the mark if your allegiance belongs to anything other than truth. Your daily worship, what you love, what you fear, what you serve will decide what you ultimately accept. To resist the mark is not just about saying I know to the world, but about saying a deeper yes to what is true and eternal. The fight for your soul is not won in a moment, it's won through what you worship every day.